Smartphone cameras are in a weird place right now. On one hand, Google and Apple are doing some pretty insane wizardry through their camera software. Companies like Xiaomi, however, have been trying to put bigger sensors into their phones to brute force their way to the top. With their latest concept, though, they may have just broken the code. So can this new camera actually rival DSLRs? Well, keep watching to find out. First off, Xiaomi's new concept changes the game. Xiaomi has come a long way with its camera tech, especially over the past couple of years. Not only has it improved its software, but it's also focused a lot on its actual optics. For instance, the company had a massive sensor and special Leica-branded lenses on its latest Ultra model. That being said, it looks like they're ready to go even beyond that, because the single biggest hurdle that smartphone cameras have right now is that their optics are just not good enough to rival a big lens. So they've just gone ahead and designed an actual smartphone camera that can mount a real DSLR lens on top of it. Now, this isn't one of those cheap clip-on lenses that you can get for $5 off Amazon. This thing is legit, and it could possibly change the game. The camera module has an attachment ring outside it that has the same locking and sliding mechanism you'd find on a professional camera. What's more, it can apparently support your everyday lenses too, meaning that the company wouldn't have to manufacture its own stuff for it. Okay, and guess what? It doesn't even involve a new phone. Yep, for the concept, the Chinese giant hasn't invented a new smartphone form factor or anything like that. Instead, they're putting this thing straight onto a Xiaomi 12S Ultra. The only difference here, however, is it now has a rail and locking mechanism rather than its usual smooth camera cutout. Up next, the new camera system can rival a DSLR. The 12S Ultra, for those who don't know, is Xiaomi's top-of-the-line model. It costs roughly around $1,000 and is everything that you'd ever want a modern smartphone to be. Like, the camera tech here is already pretty impressive, and the phone takes some incredible photos. After all, it's got Sony's IMX989 sensor, which is the latest and greatest from the Japanese company. So when you add a big lens on top of it, you get a supercharged camera system. Designed by Leica, a company that has already worked with Xiaomi in the past, the lens mount can technically go onto any modern smartphone. And yes, that includes the cheaper ones too. What's more, the lens is actually fully mounted on top of the smartphone sensor, and without it, the concept device doesn't have a lens at all. So you technically can't even take any photos without putting it on, which, to be fair, seems like a pretty big hindrance. That being said, they have thought of other stuff like protecting the sensor from dust and scratches, so there's a sapphire crystal cover that goes on top to keep the fragile bits safe. What's more, it's only compatible with Leica's own range of M-series lenses. Yeah, you can forget about using your Canon and Nikon lenses on a smartphone, but hey, at least they allow you to interchange between different lenses depending on the type of photo you're taking. Coming up, the concept has a few limitations as well. On paper, it seems like the most promising thing since sliced bread. Like, just imagine being able to turn your phone into a DSLR camera at will. Sounds incredible, right? Well, as it turns out, it's not as simple as that. You see, while smartphones do benefit from having better optics, they can't really take advantage of a lens that's meant for a full-frame camera. Like, there's a reason why those things are so massive. DSLR cameras have, for lack of a better word, an exposed sensor with an opening that's literally wider than your typical phone's body. And the reason why it's built that way is that you need it to capture as much light as possible for a good photo. But due to their size and the potential for having a sensor opening, smartphones are inherently limited. They can't have a full-size sensor that's actually being utilized. In fact, in most cases where a phone has gone on to have a 1-inch sensor, it hasn't actually resulted in better photos. What's more, smartphones don't need big lenses to be good. As we've mentioned earlier, Xiaomi has been trying to brute force its way through to the top of the smartphone camera pile by simply cramming more numbers into their thing. 100+ megapixel sensors, specialized optics, and whatnot. They've tried everything. At this point, though, smartphone tech is in a place where we don't need these things at all, because at the end of the day, a phone can't be as chunky as a real camera. So rather than try to achieve the impossible, you've got to embrace this limitation and work within it to make things better. That's where other companies like Google and Apple come into play, who, over the past few years, have focused more on the software side of things rather than their camera sensors. In fact, the Pixel lineup didn't even change its sensor for almost 4 years. Don't get us wrong, we're not saying that you should just give up on improving the actual optics of your phones. It's just that they've got such an incredible grasp over that one particular sensor and its optimization that there's no need to change anything. What's more, even the replies to Xiaomi's tweet about the concept were filled with people listing down reasons why it'd never be a reality, so perhaps they're barking up the wrong tree entirely. Let's look at some of the best smartphones for photography in 2022. First up, we've got the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra. Samsung's made a real jump in terms of its smartphone camera capabilities ever since the first Ultra-badged phone. After all, they had to go all out to separate this from their normal S-series lineup, so they crammed the biggest sensor they could with the most megapixels possible. The result? Honestly pretty good. Now, it's been a few years since that first leap, but that doesn't mean that they've stopped iterating. In fact, their latest phone, the S22 Ultra, has got perhaps one of the most capable camera systems in the world. It's great during daylight, even when the sun is on full blast, and the HDR implementation is top-notch too. The real ace up its sleeve, however, is the zoom level, which can go up to 50 times. For context, that's a massive number that you could literally zoom in on a flying airplane and see the people inside. Up next, the Xiaomi 12S Ultra. Okay, we couldn't just go on and ignore the smartphone that's the talk of the town these days, especially for Xiaomi's new lens concept. But even if that hasn't turned into reality, the company's flagship model has still got more than enough horsepower to fight at the top. The sensor is massive, and even the AI features are pretty well implemented. So of course the phone is great at taking photos regardless of the conditions. What's more, the company also has a set of extra features to add flair to your photos. For instance, there's a long exposure mode that can capture the sky or moving cars for trail lights. Or they've got their own implementation of a night mode too. Not to mention the iPhone 14 Pro. Now this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. After all, Apple's been on the top of the smartphone camera game for a while now, and the newest iPhone just extends its lead at the top. Of course, we're talking about overall camera capabilities, which also include the video aspect. In terms of just photos, though, the iPhone doesn't have a significant lead up top. Still, it's probably the most reliable shooter out there and can ace through any conditions. What's more, the whole point-and-shoot experience is also incredibly well done because, well, Apple's always been great at optimizing stuff. Oh, and the front camera, best in class by a mile. Finally, we've got the Google Pixel 7 Pro. If there's one smartphone out there that can outshine the iPhone, it's Google's latest flagship. Sure, the sensor is the same as last year's Pixel 6, but once again, they've done some wizardry here to turn things up to 11. The phone is basically resistant to blur, and even if you do somehow manage to take a blurry photo with it, it's got a built-in unblur feature that fixes stuff in post. What's more, the new telephoto camera actually cuts into the full sensor frame to zoom in, giving you a true optical zoom. Oh, and we can't undermine the importance of their True Tone feature, which accurately represents darker skin tones in different lighting conditions. Besides, you can literally photograph the stars and make them look even better than an actual professional camera. So honestly, Google's killing it with the Pixel lineup, and their latest smartphone sits comfortably at the top of the pile. That's a wrap for this video. Which smartphone do you think is the best for taking photos? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.